Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Olesya and I'm here together with my colleague Dmitro, who will join me a bit later in this session. So our talk will be divided in two parts. I will cover the technical side firstly, how stablecoins are built, what stability really comes from, and what failure patterns we see as auditors. Then Dmitro will take over and I believe he will cover cybersecurity compliance.
Yes, sure. So, hello. Have a nice time with this webinar. Welcome to our stablecoin serial guide. So, I'm Dmitro, head of compliance. So, we will meet, I think, in the second part where we'll talk something about the high level, non-technical, I would say, stuff regarding the crypto regulation, cybersecurity requirements. And right now I'm pass micro to the Olesa with the more in-depth approach regarding the actual technical security stuff.
Okay, thank you. Also at the end, we will have a joint Q&A session, so feel free to drop your questions in the chat anytime during the talk, and we will go through them together in the end. So today we will explore something that pretends to be simple, but rarely is stability. So this session is called Stablecoin Survival Guide, and it is about what stability is, what makes it real, what makes it fragile, and what every auditor and every developer should pay attention to. A quick bit about me. I'm Olesya Bilenka, smart contract auditor at Hacken, and I've been auditing for about 3 years already, and I've done more than 100 audits already. And here is our agenda for today. We will firstly go through introduction. We will define what stability actually is and how it may fail. Then we will go through 3 repeating failure patterns: trust erosion, feedback failure, and reflexive collapse. And we will wrap up with practical takeaways for both developers and auditors. Every stablecoin is stable until everyone checks. Stability is not only a technical or economical state, it's a story that people believe in. And when this story starts to break, the numbers follow it. Because when trust disappears, people start to pull out their funds, and even the strongest peg starts to slip. That's what we call the illusion of stability. Across all stablecoin collapses, we keep seeing the same 3 failure patterns repeat. The first one is trust erosion. This happens when people start to lose confidence even before the actual peg break. The second one is feedback failure. It happens when the system reacts too slowly or too aggressively to the market conditions. And the last but not least, reflexive collapse. It happens when panic feeds itself and makes things worse. So together, all these 3 patterns explain and show to us why stability keeps failing, and just in different ways and different scales. Let's start with the first one, trust erosion, because before a peg breaks technically, it breaks socially. Trust erosion starts with uncertainty, with rumors, and lack of transparency. And when rumors start to spread, people don't want to wait until proofs, they start acting on fear. Let's start with the simplest stablecoin model, asset-backed one. Here is how it works. On the left, we can see the off-chain part, which is reserves, fiat commodities, which are stored in a bank or a vault. In the middle, the issuer backend. It verifies the off-chain deposit and triggers mints and burns. And on the right, the on-chain smart contracts that users and DeFi protocols interact with. Everything here seems neat and modular, But here is the catch. None of this structure really ensures that reserves actually exist in the off-chain part. So this system runs not only on proofs, but on a reputation as well. The problem here is that on-chain supply and off-chain reserves are not provably connected. Without external attestations, it's just an improvable link. But proof of reserves tries to solve this gap by introducing audits or cryptographic proofs. Still, it's not real time, and it requires to be done again and again. So with proof of reserve, this risk is partially mitigated, and this link is partially provable. Let's look at USDC case, which is the example of our first pattern. So here, everything looks okay. Here, USDC is before the crisis. Price is stable at $1. Confidence is high. Redemptions are normal. So everything is good until something breaks outside the protocol. But on March 10th of 2023, Silicon Valley Bank collapses, and it was holding some of the Circle reserves. Rumors started to spreading, and even though people didn't know how much funds was stuck there, arbitrage stopped, redemptions jumped, and confidence started to crack, and USDC began to fall below the peg. Within just some hours, the peg breaks. USDC falls to around 88 cents before even any intervention. Not because smart contract or code failed, but because trust and transparency did. This is the erosion in motion when the market itself is collectively testing the peg. So it's not a crash, it's not a bug, it's a loss of belief. Once enough people started to dub, the trust erosion loop started here and led to this price crash. From an auditor perspective, this is the key understanding that there are two domains which stablecoins rely on. The first one is verifiable, it is on-chain data, and unverifiable, which is real-world reserves. And bridging them together is very important. It requires attestations and proof of reserves. Because without that bridge, the system trust is only as strong as its weakest link. Now we can move on to crypto collateralized stablecoins, and here everything happens on chain. Users deposit crypto and get minted stablecoins against it. So it's fully mechanical system, no banks, no attestors, it's just code and collateral. And this is where real transparency comes in. On-chain solvency here is fully provable because we can see collateral balances, we can see vault positions, we can see total supply, but as we will see next, transparency alone doesn't make a system stable. Transparency without responsiveness is still blindness. And here we come to the second failure pattern, which is feedback failure. In DeFi systems, visibility is not enough because what also matters is how fast the system reacts to the market changes. If feedback is delayed, transparency becomes partially irrelevant because if the system can see everything but cannot react in time, the outcome will be probably the same as the system cannot see the updated data. The major example is Oracle, because Oracle connect markets to smart contracts, but their updates are never instant or are rarely instant. So this delay creates a blind spot, a small or not small window where the system operates on an outdated data. When market prices move faster than Oracle prices, the systems becomes overexposed because liquidations, vaults, reserves, they all rely on incorrect data. And this amplifies risks across the protocol and may lead to huge losses. In March 2020, Ethereum price crashed from $200 to 90 within just 24 hours, and this sudden price crash showed how fragile these on-chain systems can be when stress hits. The Oracle lagged behind the real market. It was reporting higher Ethereum prices while the price was falling. So liquidations were already overdue, and automated system froze, and risks were only cascading. Gas costs were spiking, and bots were failing. Liquidations auctions received 0 bids, however, they had to receive a lot, and MakerDAO was left with 4.5 million debt hole. And it was a direct result of broken feedback under stress. So it is a perfect example of second pattern, which is bad reaction for the market updates. But each feedback failure here worsened liquidity, volatility, and confidence. Less liquidity led to more volatility, fewer arbitrages, and even weaker peg. So it was like a self-reinforcing spiral. This feedback, delayed feedback, can happen with at multiple layers. The first one, which we already discussed, is external latency. It is about oracles which update prices with delays. The on-chain latency, for example, when gas spikes delay keeper calls, and just human latency, for example, when DAO governance reacts too slowly to some market conditions. As auditors, we should test not only system logic for such cases, but also system reactivity. We need to check how fast do oracles update, what happens when keepers fail, and how resilient is the peg during a redemption wave. So this will help to ensure that there is no way to the slow feedback for the extreme market conditions. Now we can move on to the third part, which is reflexive collapse. Sometimes system doesn't fail because of missing code or missing collateral. It can fail because people believe that it will fail. And that belief spreads, markets react, and really soon perception becomes reality. It's not just a crash, it's a chain of fear. And often the system's own design amplifies that chain. We will see that later. The very rules meant to keep it stable start accelerating the fall. We see this the most clearly in algorithmic stablecoins. Algorithmic stablecoins have no collateral. They are fully based on math and trust. When people believe in them, the system works perfectly. But when they don't, the same rules makes it collapse. So it's stability that depends entirely on confidence. There are 3 types of such tokens: dual tokens, seigniorage shares, and rebases. We will go through each of them, and we will see how this reflexive collapse pattern may break each of them. So let's start with dual token. We will cover UST Luna case. The system kept balance through swaps between both token UST and Luna. If the price fell below $1, users burned UST to mint Luna, and if it went above $1, they burned Luna to mint more USD. So it all looks really balanced, but it was only stable while people were trusting it. But now we can see how it fell apart. When USD lost its peg, redemptions printed huge amount of Luna. That made Luna almost worthless, and the peg dropped even lower. So each token started to destroy each other, a death spiral with no bottom, so they just died. And this is a perfect example of third pattern because there was a chain of fear amplified by the system own design. The very mechanism built to restore stability ended up accelerating its collapse. The next model is seigniorage model. Here, when the price is above $1, new coins are created and sent to investors. But when the price drops, the system issues bonds to remove coins from the market. But as we can see, it only works if people actually buy those bonds, because that will help to remove coins from the market. But once confidence disappears, nobody buys those bonds, and new buyers means no contraction, and the peg collapses completely. So it's a design that works only as long as people keep believing. And the last one, which is the most interesting, at least in my opinion, is rebase token. It doesn't mint or burn, it just changes everyone balance every day. For example, if the price is above $1, balances go up. If it's below, balances go down. No new tokens, no burning, just mass, which reshapes the supply every day. But as we can already understand, this is not a standard token, and it may be really difficult to integrate it into our standard DeFi project. So it may lead to the integration shock. When balances suddenly change, loans can liquidate or integration may break all automatically. No bug, no hack, and it is an intended behavior. So it is pure mess, which may cause chaos. So what are the mitigations for all those three types of tokens? As auditors, we need to ensure that there are some mint burn rate limits, that Oracle is implemented correctly, that there is dynamic absorber design, bond market incentives, and for sure we need to ensure that stress testing is performed. And what the main lesson here? If the stability of stable token depends only on confidence, it's not a real stability. When belief disappears, collapse follows, and is just a question of time. We can sum it up this way. There are three types of failure patterns: trust erosion, feedback failure, and reflexive collapse. They are all part of social, technical, and systematic collapses, which are often interconnected, and one can bring up another. But each collapse we seen was not caused by bad code or malicious intent. They were all they were stress events, moments when market conditions pushed system to their limits. That's why stablecoins should not be only tested in calm markets. They should be stressed in each cases, in stress events, because that's where stability is truly proven. Because we need to ensure that none of those patterns can break our stablecoin. We need to ensure for trust. We need to verify the proofs. We need to do audits and proof of reserves. For the feedback failure, we need to ensure that the reaction layer is stress tested enough, and we need to ensure that ensure that we find and implement system amplifiers. And for sure, each technical lawyer should be audited. Smart contracts part, off-chain part, all of them, as well as reserves. And with that, I will stop here and hand it over to my colleague Dmitro, who will continue with the second part.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So it was very insightful. And sometimes it's actually when you see like a lot of the charts when these stable coins are dropped, sometimes it could be a very scary stuff. So, but we aren't stopping here. So I will continue to scare you with the requirements from the regulation stuff and the most hardest challenges there. So first of all, let me please introduce myself. I'm Dmitro. In the Hacken, I'm the head of compliance services. So I have in overall 7+ years of experience. I have the technical background with the Web2 industry. Now I'm digging in the Web3. So I have the specialization with the CSS, DORA, some of the general frameworks from the Web2 like ISO 27001, PCI, and so. And the proven track record in offensive security assessment. So sometimes the auditors has some luck with the proven technical background, offensive security stuff, and so on. So I just closed this gestalt and can move forward with this. So what we'll talk about today, it is the cybersecurity compliance in global stablecoin regulations. So it's very hype topic, and the questions didn't take any of the chances to be down. We have this raised attention to the cybersecurity compliance regulations, not only for stablecoin, but different areas. And today I tried to collect most of the famous and I would say useful and maybe most mature cybersecurity regulations for the stablecoins. So we will have high-level breakdown of what the actual requirements there, what we have from the management part, from the financial part, and of course, what is the cybersecurity perspective on it. So let's start with our exact players who we actually have. So we have the United States Genius Act, which is pretty fresh. So this is the first stablecoin law creating a licensing framework. So it mandates firstly and focuses on the reserve banking with monthly audits and of course bank level ML CFT compliance. So lots of different individuals, entities, etc. They are trying to find the exact cybersecurity requirements inside of the Genius Act. But if you will ask me personally, I would say that it's something like the management-oriented, financial-oriented law, which designed to produce the cybersecurity regulations forward in the future. So right now we have the like fragmented or unclear terms like independent security assessment. We have something like the risk assessment, but we still haven't any of the definitions, what we need to understand, what the clients need to understand, and what the regulator needs to understand, what is behind these terms and definitions like risk assessment, because based on the different scopes and implementation, the risk assessment could be understood by the really different levels. So for the Europe, it is the MiCA and DORA, which is nowadays very famous. We have a lot of the different implementations and recommendations on how to be applied for the MiCA, how to actually achieve the compliance with the MiCA and the DORA cybersecurity requirements. So the MiCA and DORA actually markets in the crypto asset regulations. So it covers stablecoins. It's called like e-money tokens or asset reference tokens. And also the DORA embosses the strict ICT risk management and cyber incident. More closely, if you take a look, it is the disaster recovery, business continuity, risk management, and of course the incident response. But in case of the Web2 and Web3 finance providers. So for the United Kingdom, it is the FCA 2025. It is only draft, so it's proposed framework. It is treats the stable coins as regulated payment instruments. So the rules focuses mostly on the reserves, and you already maybe can take the pattern that most all of them, not only the stablecoin regulations for sure, but the Web3 regulations really have a hype to add reserves requirements at first on the top. We had the trend to have the MAL, anti-money laundering and CFT rules. Right now we have something like the proof of resource, which is actually appeared everywhere. So for the Singapore, we have the MASK framework from the 2023. It targets mostly single currency stablecoins pegged for CGD or major currencies. And for sure, it requires 100% reserve assets. For the UAE, Dubai, we have the wire regulations. From my personal view, if you will compare for all of the Web3 regulations, is one of the most mature one because of the really good structure of the rule books. We have different specific rule books which are related to the different area, not only the stablecoins, but actually the Web3 scope areas. So because sometimes some of the regulations, for example, like Mika and Dora, they try to be as much universal to have the universal area for the different implementation, but covered by the one framework, like the cybersecurity we have, it is the DORA. But for the wire regulations, we have a lot of the different rule books, which is updating regularly and which is related to the specific area of scope, like custody, we have issuance rule books, we have exchange, and so on. And Argentina, so it is the CNV resolution from 2025. We decided to add it because some of our clients shown that they actually started to implement some of the custody cybersecurity best practices, not only for the stablecoins, but any other area like exchanges and so on, starting from the regulations. And it's something like we hope to see in the future more, because if you're talking about the cybersecurity frameworks, you need to find it, you need to have the business case to implement it, to be secure. But if you're talking about the regulations is required based on your local business's operation, and it's must to have. And it's very good that in regulation is not only could make your life harder with your business operations, but also share with you real best practices in the security. So when you came across to the any like top level frameworks like the CCSS or maybe SOC 2 or ISO 27001, and you will figure out that the complete part of these requirements is already covered by the regulations under you operate with your business. So they have the specific custody requirements that we will focus on later, but here's the clear page. Okay, so let's go deep to each of them. So the United States and Genius Act compliance. So what we have, it is first of all, it is the federal licensing and oversight. It's just the oversight, not the complete answers you can get. So it's established the first federal framework for the stablecoins, and only permitted payment stablecoins issuers like banks or approved non-banks. Banks may issue stablecoins under federal oversight. So we have the introduction, not so comprehensive, but we have it like the cyber and risk management. So the issuers must meet prudential standards on capital, liquidity, and the risk management akin to bank requirements. So, and the OSCC examiners will expect bank-grade information security programs. We also need to have the freeze and size capability. So uniquely, the law requires issuers to maintain the technological capability to freeze and size stablecoins to comply with lawful orders. So the smart contracts might have built-in controls for the fraud, sanctions, or court orders. And of course, reserves and audits. So the stablecoins must be 100% backed by the safe assets on one-to-one basis. So the Act integrates the Bank Secrecy Act obligations, and the stablecoin issues are treated as the financial institutions for ML. So for the global stablecoin regulation landscape, we have the MiCA stablecoin regime. Under MiCA, stablecoins are regulated as e-money tokens, pegged one-to-one to single fiat currency or asset referenced tokens, and only licensed institutions can issue EMTs. So we also have the operational safeguards. So MiCA imposes disclosure and resource of the requirements with the white papers, and issuers must maintain full reserve backing and are subject to EU regulatory supervision. And of course, how without it, it is the DORA framework, like the another part of the, I would say, MiCA bundle as a cybersecurity requirement, which is collected in the DORA. So it became effective in the January 2025. DORA introduces comprehensive ICT risk management for crypto asset service provider. And key mandates include robust security programs. So incident reporting, regular resilience testing, and so on. And under the DORA, there are like several also definitions, like you need to have the independent and third party from the competent service provider. You need to have the independent security assessments, audit for the DORA requirements. You need to have them made sure incident response, business continuity planning, for sure disaster recovery, risk assessment, and what's also important to mention, that it must be not only on the paper, but actually in effective way realize it technically. So you need to have onboarded solutions based on your scope. If you're talking about stablecoins, for sure, it must be a monitoring solution for this. So like actually Hacken extractor we have, but we will turn around this after my session ends. So a stablecoin issuer in the EU must ensure its smart contract platform and custody systems undergo periodic security testing. We also need to implement continuous monitoring, not only monitoring and review, but also the technical alerting of it. So you need not only monitor, but quickly react or any challenges or the potential incidents you might have. And of course, you need to have a backup and recovery for keys and the ledgers, for sure. So the EU has one of the most mature cybersecurity compliance regimes globally. If you will compare, so I would say that right now on the market is the DORA and WARA. It's one of the top actually cybersecurity compliance regimes. About the United Kingdom, so we have PCA 2025 framework. So we have the regulatory expansion there. The UK is developing a dedicated stablecoin regime via the FCA. We have draft rules, and it brings the stablecoin arrangement into alignment with the existing e-money and payment system safeguards. So we also have the requirements regarding the full one-to-one baking and redemption. Client stablecoins must be fully reserved, as we have in the previous regulations mostly. And this forces robust liquidity management and the technical process for the handling rapid withdrawals. Also, we added here the Singapore MAS framework. So one more time, it is about the resource. So they must be held on the trust for coin holders with the independent custodians. So it sometimes it could be like more deep and more independent because you need to use the proved third party for it. And the client stablecoin holdings must be segregated in individual or pooled wallets with clear entitlement records, where actually I think there could be a point to add custody requirements there also. And the UK plans to apply existing financial sector resilience rules to crypto firms. So this includes identifying important business services and setting impact tolerances and testing for the continuity plans. What we didn't discuss so far for the Singapore is this: the Singapore leverage existing stringent tech risk standards, and stablecoin issuers must implement information security policies, access controls, continuous risk assessment, and incident response plans. And we need to have the redemption requirements, so users have legal right to redeem stablecoins at par within 5 business days. So issuers face base capital requirements of at least 1 million over the 50% of the annual operation expenses. So for the VARA stablecoin rules, so what we have the licensing and scope, reserve banking and audits, and strict cybersecurity. And what I personally like is that the Vara have the several specific rule books. You have the original and high-level rule books that you need to comply by default if you want to operate under the Dubai, UAE, and Vara regulations. And based on your exact activities, you need to have the specific rule books like technology and risk management, and you will see the custody requirements, you will see the access control, maybe some of the Web2 security patterns, and so on. So it is very specific and very understandable based on the scope. So you don't need to guess what is behind of the independent security assessment for your different implementation of your Web3 project. So Argentina, so we have the new regulatory framework. So it's mandatory VASP registration. And any entity facilitating with virtual assets activities must register with the CNV VASP registry before the actual operations. And foreign companies targeting Argentine users must also register. So cybersecurity procedures, in the regulation, we have that the implementation of the internal cybersecurity procedures. They mostly cover governance, risk identification, protection measures, threat detection, and incident response. Also, in the Argentina regulations, there are also the good custody requirements, which is pretty familiar with the, I would say, CCSS requirements. So like most of the requirements are overlapped there. And if you are choosing operating under the Argentina or already operating, you definitely maybe want to research the CCSS standard, because there are lots of the shared controls which make your way to be CCSS certified much easier if you have like Argentina, and it also related to the VARA that I told you earlier. And annual independent audits. So all IT systems must undergo annual security audit by qualified independent professional, covering operations, security controls, data backup, and proof of resource where applicable. Okay, so I prepared the table regarding the something like what is the difference, but mostly I was focused on the only what is the same, what is the same stuff we can see, and it could be also used as the effective way to implementation of the pretty initial processes regarding cybersecurity. Because if you will define something that's already related to a lot of the different regulations, it made you more adaptable for it. So regarding the information security program, almost everywhere we have these requirements, but somewhere it's called like the exact ICT risk management framework or the ICT risk management program like DORA. We have it like operational resilience rules in the UK. We could have it like Ethereum guidelines apply in Singapore. And for example, in the Argentina and the VARA, it mostly more elaborated, like you need to have an information security program, strategy, risk assessments, and so on. But in any way, you need to have the package of the documentation on how you actually deal with your security process. What is the strategy you have? And this strategy, of course, needs to be defined based on the risk assessment and the scope of your future testing. Like we actually, it is the often situation when we get in questions regarding what need to be audited in our infrastructure, or what exactly need to be tested from the pen test perspective, or do we need actually to include smart contracts audit to get application for the MiCA and to be compliant with DORA? So the answer is that this must be defined based on your risk assessment. For example, lots of the entities and our clients didn't realize that they need to include custody scope into their information security program. For example, you need to audit because it is the organizational wallets. It's also very related to the stablecoins because you need to deploy them. You need to have these custody operations and wallets. You need to have the liquidity. So how you actually deal with securing your private keys, it's a very very, I would say, top level security concern. So regarding the risk assessment, so everything needs to be an outcome of the risk assessment. Based on this, you will see your current threats landscape and what exact assets you need to audit, what are critical on them and what are not. Independent cybersecurity audits in the US Genius Act, we haven't like explicit requirements regarding this. So we have something like the risk assessment and cybersecurity assessment, but and it must be independent. But let's see regarding the elaboration under the definition of this, because right now it's a very high level and not clear. But for example, in the EU and DORA, we have the regular testing for the DORA. We have it in the different layers. So you need to run your internal cybersecurity audits, review, and testing. And you need to actually attract the third party because you need to have the look from the external perspective. So for the UK, it could be closed actually by the skilled person reviews. So you need to define that this person is enough competent to review your cybersecurity concerns. It could be even your team, but you need to avoid the conflict of interest. So in Singapore, they are not explicitly required. And in VAR in Argentina, for sure, there need to be annual audits. There need to be audits for the exact requirements on the regulations, like gap assessment for the VAR, for example. And also inside the each regulation, you need to have the regular penetration testing, smart contracts, and so on. And you will find exact these clear terms. For the custody and case safeguarding, so for the United States, we have the mention regarding custody practices, but we haven't something clear right now. For the DORA, it's built in such universal way that I would say each area could be the point for the third party or any independent security audit, and the custody is not an exception there. For the UK, it needs to be like the trust arrangements. Singapore, it's segregated bank custody. And for the VARA, it needs to be the tailored K policy, which is very related to the CCSS, for example. There are a lot of overlapped requirements. So I would say if you have the CCSS certification, you will close up to 80% of the VARA custody requirements there. Smart contract audits. It's not actually required as a term, as a smart contract audit, but I would say I think that in the future we will have the more mature Genius Act, maybe addendum or something like this, where it explicitly mentioned like the smart contracts audit, that it must be third party, independent, and so on. So we have the something like the cybersecurity test or audits there. It's like a definition. And from the cybersecurity perspective, we understand that the scope of the stablecoin, it must be a smart contract audit. But unfortunately, right now, we haven't this in the definition and the terminology of the Genius Act right now. So in the DORA with the Europe regulation, it is the same, not explicitly mentioned there, but we have lots of different definitions, like you need to have security assessments, cybersecurity audits, and so on. And based on your scope, it could be smart contracts audit for sure, because you can't do a pen test, just a pen test of your web application if you are issue stable coins with your developed smart contracts and go to the market without it, for sure. But one more time, it must be more clear there, because sometimes it takes time to actually share this information with the client. So because it's more cybersecurity relevant stuff. So in the UK, we just haven't this as specified. In the Singapore, it is, I would say it's focused like this is a best practice. And the VARA, it's exactly required, not in the Argentina one, but in the VARA, it's exactly required. And the incident response. So in the US, they just linked the FF IEC guidance appliement. So For the EU, it's detailed incident response requirements. So it's actually the DORA most focused on the risk assessment and incident response. UK, it's operational resilience, and this term is very familiar with the Europe regulations. We have MASC guidelines from the Singapore, and for VARA, it must be incident response plans for the infrastructure. And also we have mentioned regarding this in the custody and wallet security requirements also. So what is the actual regulatory cybersecurity challenge? So I would say that they're robust but undefined. So the regulations use qualitative terms, like they need to be robust, very mature security measures, independent, but it's without clear definitions and the standards. And these actually create the gap or the point for the manipulations from the different sides, from the regulator's side, when, for example, you are going and sharing all of your documentation, and regulator could ask you even more than actually listed in the DORA requirements, for example, or in any other regulations. And sometimes you can't protect your cybersecurity state because some of the terms and definitions aren't clear there. So this actually leaving the issue uncertain about the compliance requirements. Also, the lack of standardization. So without clear definitions, it's over engineering or minimal controls. So sometimes there could be really deep technical audits, and sometimes it takes more resources actually than needed. Or in opposite situation, some of the entities hope to pass the application and review from the regulator with just of the documentation package. And the enforcement difficulty. So the regulators struggle to enforce the vague requirements. So after the fact, judgments create uncertainty for the actual entire industry. So from my personal point of view, I think that one of the hardest challenges in the Web3 is fragmentation. So the regulatory framework, standards, and acts across jurisdictions are still inconsistent. So we have a lot of the different regulations, but they're still unclear. And sometimes they overlap with the clear boundaries. So this means that an organization must not only comply, but also justify how its specific implementation meets. Because in the Web3, it's very evolving and a fast evolving environment. And some of the implementations could be raised by the monthly basis, for example. And if previous one was compliant and clearly understood by the regulator, the future one could raise a lot of questions. For example, we had a case when still it's a point to discuss with regulator regarding shared responsibility matrix with the famous cloud security provider. So it's still a point to discuss like how exactly the Web2 infrastructure and the backend for the Web3 projects need to be secured, and what is the responsibility from your provider, like the cloud providers, and what yours, and where you need to implement DORA additional clauses and when you don't need because it's not critical, for example. Also, there are defined ownership and accountability. So the another challenge is that they blurred line of responsibility between the legal and technical domains, because most of the Web3 organizations rely completely on the legal part regarding some of the regulations, and they can help a lot with your past, like choose the relevant regulations, what is the laws there, how it's actually from the business perspective could be applicable to your project. But when we are going for the cybersecurity, they can't go just with the documentation package and so on. And in the end of the day, you still need to go to the cybersecurity providers. Also, it's very overhyped topic regarding the regulations and so on. So, but even we have this like overhyped, lots of the different entities and the service providers still don't take the ownership of your application, exact process of this, and so on. But if you are talking, for example, as a Hacken for the cybersecurity provider, at least we are taking ownership about your cybersecurity posture. So our products, our methodologies for testing, and so on, we included everywhere how we actually follows these regulations aspects in our services. Regarding the audit and risk assessment ambiguity, so there are audit uncertainty because the inconsistent requirements across jurisdictions, like Argentina mandates annual IT audits, while others suggest them as good practice. And it creates the risk assessment gaps, like the regulations demand risk assessments at all, or they don't specify the scope or the frequency. And what we actually need to do, yes, like annual checklist or continuous monitoring. So do we need to do it mature or the initial level? What is the scope? What we need to include there, and so on. And also the pen testing ambiguity. So the critical security practice is not universally mandated. Like methodologies and scope remain undefined across jurisdictions. Sometimes you have this definition, like we need to have the DApp, we need to have the pen test, we need to have the smart contracts. Sometimes we just have, you need to have the testing program or resilience program or something like this. So it creates lots of the different gaps and the point on the manipulation. So for the virus stablecoin rules, like the regulators stress safeguarding case, but really specific technologies like MPC, multi-sig, hardware security models are presented there. But anyway, it's a good step that they have these custody rules. But I would say maybe there could be a point for the additional rules there, because if you compare with the CCSS, for example, they're a good point to add more strict rules on the key management, wallet security, and so on. And so what we have regarding the Web3 standards and what is the quantity, like what jurisdiction we have and what is the fragmentation status there. So we have the Web3 specific gaps because lots of the regulations still could keep it like one area, like finance. And there are a lot of gaps for exactly Web3 specific. Sometimes we still need to teach regulator how to check effectiveness with the Web3 security. Like smart contracts vulnerability is not addressed. And if it needs to be addressed, how we actually need to define what is our risk appetite there regarding the risk levels. On-chain monitoring requirements missing mostly in the half of the existing jurisdictions right now and the regulations. And it's something that actually could actually protect the company or the Web3 project or any stablecoin with lots of the headache or exact disaster, because sometimes you have only one chance to react on the incident, and without proper tooling, automatization, and so on, it will not be possible. Maybe you will be applied with the good policies, but it doesn't matter if in the end with your application you will get hacked or your liquidity will go down or something like this without the proper tooling or the monitoring of your smart contracts functioning and so on. So there are chain-wide risk assessments not mandated, and lots, like right now we have this as trend, but we haven't seen it in any of the like regulation best practice or something like this, like the Oracle manipulation risks. So the most challenge is that the fragmentation increases compliance costs and creates regulatory arbitrage opportunities, potentially stifling innovations. So regarding what we actually need to do with this problem and challenges I just told, is that I think the security first approach need to be implemented to close the cybersecurity part of each regulations. So it's not actually our area to choose what regulations you need. What is the application process for the MiCA, for the UIA, and so on. but it's for sure our area of work and our scope of work to make you more secure with the audits, services, and products we have. So from the compliance perspective and the GRC perspective, I would recommend to start with the general security framework like ISO 27001. It could be NIST or any other you like. It must be, maybe it could be more technical like TIS controls or the SANS one. And after that, based on the risk assessment, you need to adopt the framework based on your critical scope. If you have organizational wallets, you have reserves there, or you use the wallets to deploy the stablecoin, and so on, you need to adopt the wallet security for sure. And in parallel, you need to have the technical assessments in place. You need to get rid of Web2 vulnerabilities in using the web and application and mobile penetration testing, cloud configuration security assessment, and of course on chain with the protocols, with the smart contracts audit. And for the wallets, it could be the cryptocurrency security standards, which will give you the practices which are missing from any of the general security standard. So, and go beyond compliance. So the threat intelligence sharing, regular red teaming, transparency measures, and for sure, it's multi-factor stakeholder verifications. So yeah. And from the Hacken perspective, so we are a service provider for the security. We could take the ownership of a lot of the maybe some of the problem areas for you, some of the non-major areas for you, and so on with the our, I would say, gentleman package for any Web3 projects. Starting with the security audits, like the checks or the gap assessment for you from the technical perspective, starting with the checking and closing with the remediation, consulting with you, guides on how to eliminate exact identified vulnerabilities, and of course to identify the critical points and weaknesses into your protocol systems and applications, like smart contracts audit, blockchain protocol audit. We have the penetration testing, the app and AI system audit, because it's something that is evolving right now and also couldn't leave left without attention. Proof of resource audit and tokenomics audit and design. And if you see this list and compare, if you turn back and compare with the slides we shared with the lesson, you will see that these audits needed like everywhere. Maybe this list is partial for some of the regulations, but definitely there are no any regulations which hasn't this in their scope. So somewhere, but you still need to have the penetration test. The more major regulation, the more Web3 specific audits you will have there. But also you need to remember that it's not only regulation concerned, but your security and your resilience, actually posture and state concern. For the compliance and advisory, we have the CASP compliance. So if you have the problem with understanding some of the requirements, or you need to take an external look on your current state, you can contact us, just share your regulations, the requirements you face it with, and we will draft for you the needed proposal to kick off and initiate any help you need in the consultancy. CCSS audit for the wallet security, which is also kind of evolving right now. And we have more and more entities certified. And virtual CISO, because you need someone to be responsible for your security considerations, concerns, and the area for sure. And half of the actual regulations expect that you have Chief Information Security Officer. So it needs to be a dedicated and separate role. So sometimes it's hard to afford it in-house. That's why the virtual CISOs exist, and the virtual CISO consists of the different teams, not only the one person. And extended security with our products and some of the assurance tactics like dual defense. So you have the post-audit guarantees and assurance regarding how many vulnerabilities you have, and check if the audit was conducted in an effective way. We have the extractor, which actually solve a lot of the requirements from the like CCSS and any other like general and security frameworks, and also for regulations. For example, in DORA and VARA, you need to have alerts for the anomalies from your on-chain assets. And it's not about KYC for the transaction or anti-money laundering. It's about the security risks, playbooks to automatically respond to the any potential attacks and incidents. So this how extractor could help. And the Hacken proof for sure. So the more eyes will see your protocol and your implementation, the better for you, because we like to say that the hackers will have more eyes than just one pair to check. That's why the Hacken proof just don't leave a gap for the any like black hats to do something with your protocols or implementation. So just attract the white hats for your project. Okay, here we are.
Yeah, I believe we have only one question now. Let me customize it. Yeah. How can we prove issuer has dollars in treasury with cryptography? I believe this is a question to the proof of reserves team, but as far as I know, proof of reserves combines cryptographic verification with attestations, and it allows to prove that a stablecoin issuer has on-chain liabilities. So it checks whether it is fully backed by off-chain assets. So cryptographic part is a Merkle tree records for all user balances, while auditor verifies the issuer fiat reserves and creates and signs the same proof that compares that these reserves is the same as liabilities. So this is how it is cryptographically ensured. Yeah, I believe if there are no else questions, we can wrap up.
Yeah, so have a fantastic days. Thank you for having you today, Olesa, and of course our dear visitors regarding this, I would say, very hype topic right now. Thank you for sharing your experience regarding the smart contracts patterns and the stablecoins security considerations. So if you have any of the questions regarding the regulations or maybe smart contracts, in any time you could contact us in the LinkedIn, contact the Hacken profile, or maybe go to the individual, like for the Olesa, me, or you already know some of the persons, like we have the Breen and so on. And for sure, you will not be left without answers. So we will jump directly to you and try to help you.
Yeah, have a good day. Thank you, Dmitry, as well.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.